Hey everyone, it's TTL back with another video for you, and today we're going to take a look at the Z690 Aorus Extreme, and with its mighty price tag of £699 to £749 are the prices that I found on the day of filming the video. It's got a fairly meaty, chunky price tag, hasn't it, really, for a motherboard with no like water cooling or anything like that. But yes, the Z690 Aorus Extreme review is with you. I've done the testing so that you don't have to. And in reality, I'm glad I've done the testing so that you don't have to, because I have some things that you do need to get comfy to talk about, because it does like raging the volts. So, boys and girls, I have not done a preview of this board because, I just haven't yet. And so that means I wanted to give you a good look around the board before we move on. And there's a couple of things that I want to pick up on as well. So, first things first, that grabs me about this board is the enormous heatsink over here for the M.2, which I will add is PCI Express 4, not 5. And then the massive heatsink up and around the top. 105 amps for the VRMs on that. And in total, there are 20 V-core phases hidden underneath. There is an awful lot of electrical wizardry going on underneath. And I'll pop up on the screen the exacts, because at the present moment in time of filming, I haven't had a breakdown. But we will have an up-close look around. Now, please be prepared. There's something I do want to show you that's quite important. But top left-hand corner, you can see you have the two 8-pins, which are both shielded, and they are also all solid pins. You can see that they're big and they're fat and they're square. That means they're solid. They're not folded like some of the other boards, and that's actually a really nice positive. I think you'll find you'll like what you see in the 24-pin as well. When we scan past that thermal guard coated, it's just so nice. I think they've got a thing on the bottom of the board. There we go, look. Nano carbon coated is what they call it. That's actually right on the bottom, but we'll look at that more in a minute. Then, when the camera catches up, ta-da! A couple of fan headers. And then there is this little header here, which I will find out exactly what it's for and get it added in. Again, very early days, and I'm being ultra professional as always. But then you have the PCI poster, which I'll admit, the poster readout here, it looks a bit small, but I think it's just because I'm comparing it to other boards. And then you do get a start and a reset. One of the first things that's quite an eye-opener, though, is when you turn the board around, that everything is on the side. So you get 5 CPU fan headers there. Then when we come down to the 24-pin, you'll see that they are all solid pins, including that one there, which does look a bit darker, but it is a solid pin. Now, you'd be surprised how many of the Asus boards I've seen where there's only 2 pins in there that are solid. So that's actually a really nice touch. Then when we come down a little bit further, you can see there that we've got some more headers hanging out on the side. This one, I believe, is USB because there's 10 pins in it. The 8-pin ones, I'm actually not sure. And it doesn't, that's the front panel header, and that's LED. So I'm assuming that must be LED as well. Okay. So where is the USB 2? Because no. So that one's just that one at the bottom. Oh, okay. Okay, so I was just looking. So that's your front panel header up here by the 24-pin. And then that one says it's LED. So I'm assuming both of those must be LED headers. How many pins do we have in there? Oh, that's the 10. So it's kind of weird. Oh no, see that is that cable. Okay. So there's your 24 pin cable that they hang out the side, you'll notice the cables on that are all black, which is rather nice. But sadly, oh, I hadn't clipped it in properly. When we get down to the USB 2, and you have to use this cable as well, because it's not a normal USB fit-in, you've got these horrible condiment cables. I mean, with the price of this motherboard, that being visible is just not right. I mean, they could have at least put some more heat shrink on it or something. And I've been saying this about that exact cable for so long. It's just like, oh, really? Anyway, a couple of USB 3 headers here, 4 SATAs. And then along the bottom of the board, weirdly, or uniquely, might be a nicer way of putting it, there's nothing whatsoever. It's just, nope, nothing there at all. Now you do get a lot of M.2s hidden underneath. It lights up. We'll show you it lit up again in a minute. This section up here, you can see it is your PCI Express 4, which I said about. But the thing that I wanted to talk to you about is, well, it kind of looks like there's something missing here. And there is. And I'm going to come around the other side so that I can show you. So, there's this, which you screw in and it lights up. And so that goes on there like this. Okay? So, it's a DRAM cover. Now, if you remember, we've been putting DRAM coolers on our DRAM for a long time. Even though that we've not really needed to. But now we've got DDR5, which actually gets hot, Gigabyte have decided. Now, the idea of this being on this is quite nice. Get it, puts it in with the theme. But the thing is if you don't want to run this, then there is no trim piece to put in and around here. And to me, it's quite visible that there's something missing, and on a board that's this expensive. But then you think to yourself, well, I could live with it. So I've got my nice memory from Corsair that I've spent an awful lot of money on for my system to match with my very expensive board. So we'll go ahead and clip it in. Like I said, expensive DDR5 memory, expensive DDR5 board. Let's screw... Oh wait, doesn't fit. So, I've now bought my expensive memory that I've taken out of the packet, and there's nothing wrong with it, so it would be a bit unfair and to try and send it back to the e-tailer when technically it's not my fault. So, I can't fit it, so now I need nice piece of trim to go in here to slicken up the looks of a very well designed board, but sadly a very short-sighted design in that there's no extension for me to put in here over the top, there's no bit of trim to go around. But even if I did have this and then put it over my memory, then it kind of ruins it, because with all due respect, the memory's nicer than that. So it's almost like Gigabyte wanted you to buy a very expensive board and then you buy not so expensive memory and then cover it up and then probably make it hotter as well. I personally don't understand this at all, and the fact that they've not included a piece of trim so that you don't have to feel like you need to use that piece of trim is a bit confusing for me, because that piece of plastic over the top, just no. So moving on, round the back, there's a whole swathe of connectivity that you could want to use. There's also a line out and a microphone in here, but as you'll see, there's no actual like audio around here. It actually looks kind of nice and busy, and that's because in the box there is a DAC. So that's the thing that you'd use for your audio. Obviously, like I said, you have a line out and a microphone, but the line out would be just like a normal 3.5 pin for a very basic like 2.1 stereo or something. Obviously, some of those can then spread it out into like Dolby and 5.1 and all that sort of stuff. It'll be something for you to look into at home. Obviously Wi-Fi 6E, you can see that it does support the Q flash, and then you've got the ignition button here which you can set up in the BIOS. And then you have Thunderbolt as well, which is kind of nice. But one of the big things around the back is 10 GBE. Just remember though, that's an internal networking thing though, and it's not necessarily going to make your internet any faster. But having 2.5 on the back is actually kind of nice because the routers are heading that way. Now again, it's not necessarily going to make your internet any faster, but it could help with throughput and stuff. Again, because there are routers out there now that are supporting 2.5 G as well. I'm actually running both, but yes, so. Okay then, so our chit chat time to talk about voltages, time to talk about overclocking, and then also we can show you some performance benchmarks as well, because I have done a lot of them. So, voltages at stock, it was sticking at stock around 1.3, 1.32 volts through. Just on its own accord, I'd only enabled XMP, and that did mean that I was getting sometimes temps of 100 degrees. Now, what's also quite weird is you could restart and then the temps might drop by about 8 to 10 degrees, but then the next time you restarted, they could come back up again. It was like it kind of made its mind up on every boot. Now, I don't know why that is, whether it's kind of trying to auto-sense something, but whatever it is, it's not working very well and the volts are too high. And I know that because when I actually ended up doing the manual overclock with it, I used lower volts than the board was trying to put through at stock to increase everything and get better performance. One of the other things is, I don't normally use XTU very much, but because of some very early issues that I had with BIOSes, I tried XTU for the initial review, which in the graphs in a minute you'll see is the Rampage Hero and Maximus Hero, and essentially that was the original CPU review results, but that was the board it was on, so we just port the numbers over and then just change it to Maximus Hero. It makes sense in my head. I don't know whether it does yours, but anyway, so yeah, with XTU, with the Aorus, that there is no options for you to be able to change any of the multipliers or voltages or anything. It's just blacked out. And considering you've got software which basically tells the BIOS what to do, that's how it is. It's obviously something that Gigabyte just aren't allowing that software to work with their BIOS, which I think is a bit of a shame. It's not the end of the world because, like I said, then I just went in and I just did it all manually anyway. So my manual overclock. If up to 4 cores running, I had 52 multiplier. 4 cores to 8 cores running, I had a 51 multiplier. So when you enable all the cores, the P cores were running at 5,100 megahertz. And then for the E cores, it was 41 and 40. So if you've got up to 4 cores running, they run at 4,100 megahertz. And then if you have up to 8 of the E cores running, then they will run at 4 gigahertz basically. And I did this 1.26 volts. The memory is the only memory kit that I've got to hand at the moment. That's a Corsair Dominator Platinum kit at 5200 megahertz. I have played around with the increasing and overclocking the memory, but as they are so scarce and I've only got one, I haven't been trying to rage things too much. 5400 megahertz is easily possible with this kit, and I can boot in at 5600 megahertz as well, which I've been quite impressed with. But I know I need to spend more times with voltages and timings and stuff because it's not stable. Now, because, like I said, if I was to turn around to Corsair and go, the kit's dead, or the board's nuked it, they'd go, well, tough. And then I can't test any other boards. I'm having to be very restrained at the moment. Not used to having to be so like tight and reserved, but it's just, yeah, anyway. So, they're the numbers and the stuff that you're going to see for the results. Now, it did do very well on everything. The VRM temps were something that did surprise me because I have said that I don't like the plastic over the top, but it didn't harm VRM temperatures at all. It does make me wonder how much lower they could have been, but despite my early fears, I can you know, gladly say that my fears were misplaced, and it did perform really well. Now, the manual overclock that I put in place was consistently at the top of the graphs. Hats off to them for that as well. I did use the latest BIOS, which is available on the Gigabyte website at the time of going to press, which was F4. And that was what I did all of my testing on. At stock, as I have said, the scores were okay, which I was actually a bit surprised about, because a lot of the cores were hitting, you know, like 100 degrees. Stock voltages for this are just not good enough. They need to go and get that reined in. But sadly, this is something that I end up saying about with Gigabyte motherboards every generation. It's not new. It's almost something that you can just, like, I'd be more shocked if they weren't like it, especially at launch. So performance was good, connectivity's good, the layout's quite good. One of the things I will say is with the graphics card is make sure you look and pay attention to make sure that the clip on the PCI Express slot, when you fit your graphics card, it will tick and pop as it goes shut, because the heat sinks on the motherboard are so big, they're like on the limits, that it's something that you have to pay an extra conscious thing to make sure that your graphics card is going to be home and sits in place and that latch comes round. If it doesn't, then you might find that you have problems with your graphics card turning itself off, or if you put something heavy down on a desk, that you might find, hang on a minute, the system's restarted. So you just need to make sure it's done so that the graphics card has grabbed hold and there's no movement. The heat sinks underneath it are very big, and normally you have a little bit of rock on the back of a graphics card and a little bit of tolerance to help allow that PCI Express catch to come up and grab hold of the graphics card for you. And this, it's like almost millimetre perfect, or tenths of a millimetre perfect, that everything does go in there, but it's just very tight, and it's something you have to pay, from my point of view, something you have to pay that little bit more attention to, making sure it's in and it's clipped and it's away. Really, in reality, the electrical side of this board and the scores that it's capable of pointing out are testament to the electrical designers and the guys that have made an effort, and you have got a very high-end board here. But the people that designed the plastic insulator thing, I don't understand this on a board of this calibre. This belongs on something cheap and nasty, in reality, not something that you want 700 plus for. And also the fact that you then, with a super high-end board, have to use low-end memory makes no sense. It just, like Corsair Dominator Platinum in a board of this calibre isn't going to be a surprise to see. But what would be a surprise to see is the fact that this then doesn't have a, you know, you can't fit it, fair enough, but then not having that extra piece of trim put in place, it just doesn't sit well with me with a board this high end, and it just should have been there. It's almost like when they designed this, they had one memory kit and they knew it fit, and then that was all that they then bothered with, and the people that designed it didn't actually have access or even know about taller memory heat sinks. And in reality, like I said, with a board this high, you're going to use them. And also, if you had small memory heat sinks that could get warm, which DDR5 does, why are you then going to want to stick a coat or a jacket, or I don't know what you call, you know, like winter garments in your area, but this is just going to act as an insulator. So I don't like this. This does not belong on this board, and it's one of the things that I really, really, really do not like. So very well electrically done board, and it can put out the right scores. But with something like that, which I think you're not going to want to use or can't use, and then there's like a trim piece missing on your board, for £700, it doesn't sit well with me. So I'd like Gigabyte to make the trim and send it out to people. I'd like one, please, because this is a big, big no-go from my point of view, and it's letting the side down. Also, whoever designed this, or more importantly, signed that off, why? Like, how did they miss that? If they're a product manager or like a manager or a director or whatever, why did they not think about a trim around the bottom? Like, why are these questions not being asked? Why does it end up coming to a reviewer like me to kind of go, well, that's clearly not right? And I don't get this. It just seems to be like the yes culture, and I don't like it. So despite there being a TTL approved logo on the heatsink that I use, because I've got the Corsair LCD H150, I actually run it with Noctua fans, though, you might notice, and that's just to give me extra cooling when I'm really cranking volts and like really wanting to push the envelope. Not that I had to on this. But despite there being a TTL approved logo on this, I actually don't approve of the board because of the trim, and then also because although with an extreme board you're not going to use auto volts at stock for very long, I do think that it's a very basic thing and something that I say far too often. They're too happy with the voltages, and it's not good. 100 degrees at stock from a processor that I could use less volts on with an overclock is just not right, Gigabyte. You do need to get your BIOS in check, and it's not just this one. You need to go and make sure that you're looking at these things with your other boards as well. Going in and refining these things and looking for fixes, looking for them, not with people like me telling you about them, should be part of the process with a new series of boards. So quite strangely, I love the board. It did perform well, but because of shortfallings with design matters and BIOS problems, again, I'm actually not going to give it an award. I may go back and look at it if they sort the BIOS out and they send me a trim piece for this, and I may go back and be a little bit more lenient with it. We'll just have to see how well they can get things fixed. But otherwise, I'd actually say for the money, I'd go elsewhere, because I genuinely, as it sits there at the moment, for that much money, I genuinely go and buy the Master, like the Z690 Aorus Master instead, and save yourself some money, or go and have a look at one of the other brands, because this one's just too expensive and they've not made it a big enough priority for them themselves for it to actually be worth that much of your own money. So that's it. Tiny Tom Logan out. Ding. Love you, sis.